Welcome to Risky Business, a show where we get to explore new and innovative ways to understand and reduce risk by bringing together some of the leading professionals in the transportation and the insurance industry. My name is Scott Grandys. I hope you enjoyed the show. Let's kick it on.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Risky Business. This is a special time when we talk about risk at all different levels. I'm Scott Grandys, for any of you that don't know me. And I have Dr. Mark Manera with me from Supply Chain Fitness. And today we are going to talk about the effects of nutrition and health and fitness and all those things that affect the trucking industry, drivers, crashes, losses. So basically, we're going to keep it light. Now, before I start, Mark, I told you this earlier. So one of the staples of every one of my podcasts is a mug that represents the topic of the day. And I try and keep this funny. Okay. So any of you who knows what South Park is, this is the topic of the day. I'm not fat. I'm big boned. Now I do represent those qualities. It's fun stuff. So Mark, let's jump in. Give me a little bit about your background. Tell me what you're doing. Tell me what you're working on. I got a whole bunch of stuff I want to talk to you about because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, well, first off, Scott, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited for this conversation. I always enjoy talking with you. And, I wore husky pants. I consider myself big boned as a child as well. We're coming up on the holidays and, the cookies are really hard to stop eating. So, the big bone nature is still in me. So I completely understand. But so my background. So I'm a doctor of physical therapy. Got started in trucking actually kind of growing up. Didn't have anyone in my family in the supply chain or trucking industry at all. And, now being in it, kind of realizing that a lot of people have, diesel in their blood and have, bloodlines of trucking that they just fell into because, their family's always been in it. And I just didn't have that experience. And so I was in a physical therapy clinic working, rehabbing people, and had the opportunity to work with a ton of truck drivers, from work comp claims to just, soft tissue injuries to even some post-orthopedic surgeries like a total hip replacement, total knee replacement. And really just from that experience, got to know a bunch of drivers on a personal level, got to learn about the industry, and honestly just got really intrigued about the lifestyle that drivers live, especially when it comes to some of the unique barriers that they face with trying to live a healthier life out on the road. And that kind of got me looking deeper into the industry and looking at some of the stats and just some of the resources out there. And, just really shocked by what I saw from an industry-wide standpoint of the health of drivers. And, also just really seeing a huge gap in the industry for a solution that was really built for the lifestyle of drivers and other employees in the industry. And so that's what got me to start what was called the Trucking Fitness Company. We now are called and rebranded to Supply Chain Fitness. And, we're on a mission to make the trucking industry a healthier place to work. We help drivers exercise, eat healthier, and just live a healthier, happier life.
You know what? I got to tell you something. For me, well, I've been in the industry longer than I care to admit. My folks were in from Chicago for 16 days. 16 days. Yep. 16 days. I stayed there. No, it's cool. It's cool. We have a lot of fun. But, I was talking to my dad about this and I was just kind of born into this stuff, and I've spent a lot of time at truck stops, seeing all that garbage food that's around. You see the drivers walking in and out. It is not a good situation. And you sent me some facts, which I consider to be haunting facts. And we're going to go over those in a minute because, one of the big things that I'm trying to accomplish with all of this is the insurance industry, specifically commercial trucking insurance, has always looked at risk the same way, right? So they've always said, oh, if you have more than 3 speeding violations, you're a risk, right? If you have more than 1 at-fault accident and 2 speeding violations, you're a risk. If you have less than 5 years of truck experience, you're a risk. But I don't think the industry has ever looked at the facts that you sent me because, quite frankly, they're shocking. And I don't know if you want me to rattle off some of these. And speaking of diesel in the bloodline, this is where this one comes in. 1 of every 7 suffers from type 2 diabetes. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, and I think you're spot on, and especially I think in the commercial and auto liability side of things, it's all about the truck. It's all about driving record, and I really think something that often gets overlooked and just not talked about is the health and the fitness and the
Hmm.
safety of the person behind the wheel. And we're going to talk about fatigue. We're going to talk about some of these other things that decrease the, or I guess potentially increase or decrease the likelihood of that driver being energized, prepared for the different things out on the road. But I just really think the health of a driver is often overlooked. And from an industry wide standpoint, it's something that's just been easier to sweep under the rug than actually implement a solution that changes some of these stats. And, I can rattle them off on my side of just, looking at some of the research, just seeing that, 7 out of every 10 professional drivers are obese, which is 2 times higher than the national
Well, they're not
average.
like my mug,
Same
huh?
on diabetes. It's two. Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. And the diabetes, the incidence rate for diabetes is 2 times more than the national average as well, with 1 in every 7 drivers being diabetic. And when you look at the American Trucking or American Diabetic Association, they say 1 in every 3 Americans are pre-diabetic. So they're tiptoeing down the path of being diagnosed with diabetes. And so with the sedentary lifestyle, some of the nutrition options that are available, and just some of the other factors, I'd make an argument that truck drivers are probably higher than 1 in every 3. Than the average American. But really, the statistic for me that was the scariest, the most eye opening, and just some at a point it was like, how can we ignore this anymore? Is that the life expectancy of a truck driver is 16 years less than the average population. 16 years. And you think through from just a human level, we don't even have to talk about the risk that's associated in some of those other stats, but just from a human perspective, the amount of sacrifices that a lot of these drivers are making day to day throughout their career. And then you see other stats where it's the longer a driver's in the trucking industry, the higher their likelihood of being obese, diabetic, hypertensive, have sleep apnea, all of these other diseases that once they retire, they don't get left in trucking with them. They carry them on for the rest of their life. And then you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor and you get 16 years cut off the back end. And it's like, why
No
would
wonder we have a
anyone want to
shortage,
be a
right?
truck driver? Seriously, I'm yeah, exactly. And, I just think that there's a lot of people who need help. And I think that it's an aspect or a piece of the pie in trucking that if we can implement a solution, everyone wins. And there's an impact from the quality of life drivers have to the cost of premiums and the bottom line of insurance companies. And so, yeah,
No,
it's something I'm really
listen.
passionate about.
I get it because again. So I'm gonna say one of these other stats that you sent me because this one is scary too, and then I want you to back into this stat if you can from a health perspective, right?
Yeah.
So fatigue causes 31% of crashes, the largest single cause of truck crashes in the study by the NTSB, right? That's nuts. That's nuts. So now link it together for me. So you got diabetes, you got obesity, you got somebody that's going to live 16 years left. What are all these factors and all these stats that you gave me? How do they get to fatigue? Because in my mind, if you hit the pattern from high risk to low risk as far as what causes fatigue, you start to shift the industry and you start to shift the safety of the industry. So walk me through that. How do we get to fatigue?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple of different aspects to it. I think the obvious one that gets talked about a lot is the hours of service, and 11 hours of driving a day up to 14 hours of being out on the job is it's a long day, and with the lifestyle that a lot of drivers live, the amount of time that they're behind the wheel, sometimes sleep slowly gets cut down, and this everyday sleep, they're not getting refreshed, they're not sleeping, the quality of sleep that they should be getting, and that can build up over time and cause fatigue. But I think the aspect that isn't talked about, because sleep apnea, sleep is a hot topic and is one that's wanting to talk about. But the baseline health of the person is also a huge contributor to the amount of energy, how alert they are, and also their ability to focus and concentrate behind the wheel. And when you have a driver who is extremely overweight, obese, who are fighting diabetes, and we're talking now about blood glucose levels throughout the day not being a contributing factor, and then also how much obesity and some of these other conditions affect a person with sleep apnea or a person's ability to recover from sleep. I think there's just so many different variables, and I think something that really can make a huge impact on a majority of them is getting these people living a healthier lifestyle. And I think it starts, when you're living a healthier lifestyle, you sleep better, you have more energy, you feel less blah throughout the day, and you're able to concentrate and react quicker as well. And so I think that there's a lot of different variables when it comes to fatigue, but I think something that's just not talked about, I think that's a common kind of thing that we've been talking about this whole podcast thus far, is just that the health of a driver is not talked about in the industry at all. And I think that fatigue is an area where it definitely is a contributing
I agree.
factor.
So let's do this. Talk to me about, how do we attack this? How do we get to the drivers? How do we get to the fleets? I mean, a lot of the fleets out on the road today, they're small fleets. So how do we get that message out? What do we do, and how do we start to attack this? That's one question. The second question is, you and I talked about risk scoring for a little bit, right? So we do risk scoring on 172 different data points. Walk me through what we should know about this, right? I mean, drivers should know about this. They should know, hey, this is going to affect me. This is going to affect where I'm at. This is going to affect my health and potentially get to the crashes and whatnot.
Yeah, so I think from an industry-wide standpoint, I think that obviously health is a personal decision. Every person has to make that decision of saying, "Hey, I want to make this change. I want to put in the effort to live a healthier life." But what I think that's a really easy of like, all right, that's a personal decision. I'm just going to shove that off, and everyone's got to make that for themselves. But I think an aspect that doesn't get talked about is the environment and the industry as a whole fostering an environment that encourages more drivers to take that leap and make a better decision. And I think from an insurance and from a company standpoint, I think both of those people have a huge opportunity to meet each driver where they're at and say, hey, this is a win for all of us, but this is also a huge win for you from a quality of life, from being there from your family, being there for life after trucking, and thinking about just things outside of where your next load's at. And so I think that a lot of drivers, I think there's a couple of factors here, and sorry, I'm kind of rambling and all over the place, but there's a lot of things that go on in my head with this topic. But I think the number one thing is it has to speak to drivers, and it has to meet drivers where they're at. So something that they can do anywhere at any time and fits into their lifestyle. I think the second aspect of that is, I think it has to be very similar to safety culture, where from a company standpoint, it's lead by example, right? It's kind of the same thing on drivers having being on their phone or texting while driving, right? If they're at the terminal, or even if it's a small fleet and the owner is texting while leaving the parking lot and the drivers are seeing that, then that just, it has a sour taste in the mouth, right? And so I think there's an opportunity from all levels of the industry to lead by example and say, hey, we want this to be something that we focus on. This is a huge issue in the industry. It's not only drivers, it's everyone, because this industry is a high demand, and it's really easy when you're working in this to put your health on the back burner and not think about it. And so I really think there's an opportunity for insurance companies or the fleet to provide a solution that's built for drivers that they can do regardless of if they're in Arizona or St. Louis, and wherever they're at, and just fits into their lifestyle, and also encourages the fact that, hey, this isn't, your health is not an all or nothing type of situation. You can make small changes that done consistently can make a huge impact. And I think that's a cultural thing for in the United States and just the world in general that's wrong in the fitness industry at all.
It
But
does. It
does that
does. And
answer
you know
your
where
question?
I was going to go with it. And you and I have talked about this. You know, I think to me one of the big reasons that I've been so intrigued by what you're doing is it's thinking outside the box when it comes to risk management, specifically. And you know, the baseline foundation for this is, you know, truckers need to live longer lives. They need to live healthier lives, right? The secondary component to that is when I take this is just simple stats in my head when I look at what you sent me, right? So if 31% of the crashes involve fatigue, and if we can eliminate 10% of those crashes because we chip away from 31% to 21%, right? If there's a direct correlation between fatigue and loss, um, and we just do a percentage by percentage reduction, right? So the London market in particular sponsors about $30 billion a year in commercial truck insurance here in the United States. Their combined loss ratio right now has been running about 110%, right? So 110%. So on $30 billion worth of sponsored premium, they lose $3 billion a year. Now, if I take that percentage point by percentage point reduction, right, and say we're going to reduce fatigue and crashes by 10%, and if that has a direct impact on 10% reduction in losses, that's $3 billion a year that the industry saves just in losses alone by getting these drivers healthier, making them less
Wow.
fatigued, helping them sleep better, get the exercise that they need, you know, those types of things. And so for me, the whole reason that we started this thing and the whole reason that we got into all of the risk scoring and everything else is I think, you know, it's the old, what is it? It's the definition of insanity, right? Continue to do the same thing over and over again, expect a different result, right? Well, it
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
work. It doesn't work. And so what I'm so intrigued about what you're doing is it's a whole nother side of risk that I don't think anybody's looking at. I just don't. And, you know, one, it's good for the driver. I think we've talked about this before too. You know, it's kind of it's a wellness thing from an employee and a company perspective too, meaning that the company actually appreciates the driver and is doing something for them, right? And then the
Yep.
secondary component of that is the driver lives a longer life, and the third component of that is losses go down, and eventually, if we can get it to be a good, healthy operating industry, then the premium goes down, right? So it's a chain effect all the way through, and that's what's so intriguing to me. And you know, I've told you this before. It is 100% my goal to bring you out to London with me because I think they need to hear these things. I really do. I've been talking about it. I've been talking about it.
Yeah.
We've been talking about, you know, the Apple Watches and Fitbits and all this stuff. And I think there's a place for this. I think it's super important. So yeah, everything you said made total sense. So why don't you walk me? Yeah.
Well, and yeah, and the other aspect to all of that that I'll just bring up is also how many drivers in the last 30 or whatever time period you want to do is we all know the safer drivers are the people who've been in the industry longer, who are more senior drivers, who have years and years of driving. But how many of these people are we losing to medically being disqualified, having to retire because of
Mm-hmm.
a major medical condition, and are now, I mean, in an industry where the average turnover rate's 91% year over year, like how many really safe drivers are we losing and now putting maybe not, newer rookie, not as safe drivers behind the wheel and adding risk to that because of a health problem or a medical condition. And so I think
I
there's an
totally do. And you
opportunity
know,
there as
some of the
well.
things that get talked about in the London market too are, you know, reducing the years of experience, bringing some of the younger, and when I say younger drivers in, I don't necessarily mean age, I mean in experience. So bringing some of those younger
Yep.
drivers back onto the road or getting them onto the road. But again, you give them stats like, hey, why don't you come take a job? You're going to live 16 years less. You're 11 times more likely to die on the job than anybody else. You're probably going to get
Yeah.
diabetes and be obese. I mean, yeah, welcome to the industry, right? I mean, it's got to stop. It's got to stop. But, you know, I think there's a unique
Yes.
opportunity to catch kind of that younger breed of driver who is more health conscious. You know, I look at my kids and what they do. They're late 20s, early 30s, and when I watch, they really pay attention to their health. They really pay attention to what they eat. Like it's a different world, and I think there's an opportunity to grab some of this, make that the argument, at least from an insurance and a risk perspective, that if you're managing these new drivers, there's a lot of things that are probably less risky than the old traditional drivers. And again, not old in age, but old in experience, right? Yeah, I think what you're doing is hugely important. So talk to me about some of the stuff. If I were a small fleet today and I said, all right, I want your program. What do you do? Tell me what you do. Talk to me about your service. How do people engage you? How do they get you in their houses, as if you will, and making people better?
Yeah, so what we do is we would partner with a company and we would, number one, there's a couple of, I think the rollout and how to incorporate this into the company is honestly the whole value of all of this, because I don't think there's been a company that can come in and trucking in general is just such a different, unique industry compared to the average 9 to 5 cubicle employees where everyone's at HQ or the office all day, every day. And now you working with trucking where, if a driver's at the terminal, maybe 1% of their, 1% of their day or 1% of their time in general, that's a win, right? Or that's about all you get. And so I think that it's a really unique opportunity and struggle for trucking companies to how do you incorporate that? And so the first thing that we would do is build out a personal marketing promotional material, and we fit that into how the companies are already talking to their fleet and their other employees. So if it's email, if it's text message, if it's ELD messages, or if it's just, talking about it during a safety meeting or during, with driver managers and stuff like that, and having some of the, word to word, mouth to mouth, person-to-person conversations. And so we would roll this out. We would then set up some systems where during around the orientation, we have this as a part of the conversation and have a call to action to the program for drivers. We have it during DOT physicals, so 3 to 6 months before each physical. We have a conversation with each driver saying, hey, here's a program. That's a time of the year where a lot of drivers are thinking about their health. And so that's an opportunity to get them in the program. And so we have a couple of systems like that from a company standpoint. But from an actual driver member perspective, we have an app-based platform. Each member starts with a one-on-one onboarding call with one of our coaches. From there, we personalize a program based off of their current fitness level, their goals, their lifestyle, what they enjoy doing, and get them in a program from an activity or moving more exercise perspective that they can do anywhere at any time. And so if it's a stretching routine in the back of their truck, or it's like some resistance band exercises outside of their truck, right? If you're up in Minnesota this time of year, you probably don't want to get outside of your truck. So we've got stuff you can do inside your truck, right? Or if you're a local driver and you want to do it at home, we've got a bunch of stuff at home as well. And then from the nutrition side of things, I think our culture in general, and I kind of talked about it earlier in the podcast, a lot of people just take this all or nothing approach where it's, I'm starting a diet tomorrow. I'm cutting out XYZ. I'm not even thinking about carbs or desserts, and I'm never, I can't even look at them, right? And I think they set themselves up from day one to fail, and you end up holding on for dear life, and about a week later falling back off, and you're on off for years and years and years on the same diet, and those failures are like really demotivating and just like makes it seem like, all right, this is impossible. And so what we do is we take a habit-based approach and really focus on building one habit at a time, something that drivers can do anywhere at any time if they're at the truck stop or if they're at home every night and they're building, bringing their lunches or eating dinner at home. And we also give truck stop guides, restaurant guides. We've got a bunch of recipes they can cook in their truck if they're over the road or at home. And the final aspect and pillar that we focus on is accountability. And I honestly think it's the most important part because I think a majority of people are missing accountability in their life. And so what we do, we really focus on building that coaching relationship, which starts with the one-on-one onboarding call. But then we send a weekly check-in text message based off of their utilization in the program. And so it's, hey, Scott, you've been doing, you hit 3 workouts this week. You're doing awesome with the habit. Keep up the hard work. Is there anything else we can do for you? Or, hey, Mark, you haven't signed into the app this week. Like, what do we need to adjust or change to get you back on the right path? And I think that goes a long way for drivers, and also just retention within the program as a whole, because a lot of people start off a program and then, they fall off because they don't have anyone keeping them accountable, holding them to these changes in their goals. And so that's something that we really focus on, along with getting them involved in a community of like-minded drivers. And also within our app, they've got 24/7 access to message a coach with any questions that they have. And so, I think with drivers, just the isolated lifestyle and just kind of being away from a lot of other people, it's really important from my perspective to show them that they have access to us. We're on their team. We want to help. And if they don't reach out to us, we're going to reach out to them to keep them accountable and make sure they keep going. And that's kind of the bird's eye view of our program. And, I think there's some unique, obviously differences on each company. The relationship with the drivers is a little bit different. So we try to adapt the marketing and the promotion of the program based on that company. But, at the end of the day, it's really meeting each person and member where they're at and giving them a program that fits their lifestyle, their goals, and kind of, their, what they want to do and what is possible. And really focusing on step 1 instead of focusing on step 9, 10, 11, where
I got to tell you, the one thing you said there that really rang true with me is accountability. I can't tell you, I'll go through phases of going to the gym, and, I normally don't do a trainer. I kind of do my own workout, but if somebody's not pushing me, sometimes it's real easy to sit down on the couch and crack a beer and say, you know what? I'm going to skip the gym today. I'll go tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, you're like, oh, but it's Friday and I just got invited down the street to a little house party, whatever. I'll skip it today. I'll go tomorrow because it's Saturday. Saturday comes and you're like, nah, we're going to go riding or something, and just never get to the gym. Yeah, the accountability is the fun part. So, no, that's great, though, because I think, to me, both from a nutrition and a fitness perspective, when I think about what you guys do, I think about it's like a trainer inside the truck with the driver, making sure that they're eating the right things and exercising and doing all those things. Which, I mean, that's huge. It's this is going to be my own term here. It's just simply simple, right? I mean, it really is that simple. And I think that the shift that could be made is incredible. And that's what I'm excited about. That's really what I'm excited about. All right, so let's do this. Since Christmas is coming, if you could have a present that you would get delivered that would help you move this forward, what would that present be?
If I could have a present that would help get this moving forward, I would say the present would be a conversation with some of the big guys on the insurance world who can push the needle, who see the big problem and want to take a proactive approach versus a reactive approach, and really not be okay with the status quo anymore.
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to London together, and we're going to talk to the folks that sponsor this premium. I've got a lot of who I consider friends now out in the London market, and they listen. They really do. And I think that, we got a good start on the stats here. I really do think we need to run this down. And I think we need to get this in front of folks, not only in the London market, but here in the U.S. market as well. This is a big difference. And again, the whole point of what I'm trying to accomplish with the podcast is to think outside the box, look at things differently. And to me, you have the ability to get to the data. And if you can get to the data drives decisions, it drives change. and we can show the industry that what you're doing makes a difference, and it makes a difference in a big way. Foundationally, again, you're saving lives, right? And that's the whole point of everything we're doing, because you're helping people be healthier. And then you're saving lives again, because if they're healthier and they're not fatigued, they're not getting in crashes and they're not putting people's lives in danger. And so I think what you're doing is hugely important. I'm here to support it any way that I can. We're rolling your stuff out with our group and all the trucking fleets that we deal with at Clear Connect. And I'm excited about that, because I'm excited about the next phase of this, where we connect the data, and we connect that data to losses and reduction of losses, which is where, pun intended, where the rubber meets the road.
There you go. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I am excited as well. And, it's, yeah, I always enjoy talking with you, and I always enjoy, I just think there's a lot of people in this industry who will see the big picture or have seen it in person and say, okay, yes, we need to make a change. But then it takes that next person who says, all right, here's the actionable things on what we're actually going to do to make that change. And that's always where the conversation is when we talk. Which
and I think we're there. I honestly do. I think we're there. We're gonna go across the pond together next year. So be ready. I usually I've been going about every 6 to 8 weeks. So probably first quarter sometime we'll get it together. Because I think people are they're ready to hear how we can implement this into change, and it's time. It's time. All right. Well, cool. Well, listen, always a pleasure. Good times, fun stuff. We got Christmas coming up. Well, Thanksgiving. Oh, speaking of eating, boom, Thanksgiving this week. So my nutrition will be plummeting on Thursday and Friday this week.
Mine will be. Mine as well. It's all about moderation and balance, right? It's all good. Yep. Food is a lot more than just calories in, calories out. There's a lot of culture. There's a lot of social aspects to it. And I think it's, you don't have to hate your life to live a healthy one. And so you got to find that balance point in certain days or times of the year. It's okay.
That's it.
So it's all good.
All right. Well, listen, thanks so much. Always good chatting. We'll catch up soon. We're going to get ourselves over to London. We're going to make this happen. And I always have got to throw in my Tommy Boy comment. If you ain't growing, you're dying. There ain't no third direction, right? So we got to keep growing. We got to keep moving ahead. We got to come up with the change that will change the industry.
Well, yeah, Scott, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to listen back to this. And
my pleasure, my friend. We'll talk soon. Peace.
I hope you enjoyed our show today. Remember, when it comes to creativity and innovation, I always like to quote one of my favorite lines out of the movie Tommy Boy. If you ain't growing, you're dying. There ain't no third direction. My name's Scott Grandys. I'll see you on the next show. Peace.